Hey guys, here we are going to talk about the story of the most boring episode of Stranger Things. This is possibly the worst episode of any major Netflix show I've ever seen. This episode will leave you wondering what just happened, and that's why I want to talk about it here. Season 5, Episode 7, called The Bridge. The episode starts just like any old episode would, with the gang scattered around Hawkins trying to prepare for the final battle against Vecna and the Upside Down. 11 is working on getting her powers back to full strength. Mike and the others are trying to figure out some kind of strategy for the big fight. And everyone is basically doing what they've been doing for the past few episodes, talking about how scared they are and how they need to be ready. Meanwhile, there's this whole thing about finding some magical weapon or artifact that's supposed to help them defeat Vecna once and for all. But the problem is that searching for this thing takes up basically half the episode, and nothing particularly interesting happens during any of it. And if you're curious where this is all heading, go ahead and subscribe, because this story gets way more interesting as we go. Now, I hate to pull an old man's move on you guys here, but to understand why The Bridge feels so terrible and has the lowest rating in the show's history, we have to go back to Season 4, Episode 7, called The Massacre at Hawkins Lab. In that episode, we get this incredible flashback showing 11's past at the lab, how she caused the massacre everyone blamed her for, and how Vecna manipulated everything from the beginning. The episode is tense, emotional, terrifying, and every scene matters. The pacing is perfect, reveals are shocking, and the emotional stakes feel real. That episode has a rating of over 9 out of 10. It's proof the Duffer Brothers know how to create an amazing penultimate episode, which makes it confusing why they messed up with The Bridge. The difference between those two episodes is like night and day. The Massacre at Hawkins Lab understood what it needed to be a revelation episode that changes everything while building tension for what comes next. But The Bridge doesn't understand what it's supposed to be. It wants to be emotional but feels forced. It wants to build tension but nothing tense happens. It wants to develop characters, but does it awkwardly at the worst possible time, when everyone should be preparing for the end of the world. The episode pumps the brakes and focuses on personal drama that could have been addressed any other time. When you're in the final stretch, especially the second to last episode, you need to deliver on promises. Think about Breaking Bad's Ozymandias, considered one of the greatest episodes ever, because it delivers on everything the show built toward. The tension is unbearable and sets up the finale perfectly. But The Bridge doesn't do any of that stuff at all. Instead of ramping up the tension, it slows everything down. Instead of focusing on the main plot, it gets distracted by side plots that don't really matter. And instead of making you desperate to see the finale, it honestly just makes you tired and wondering if you even want to keep watching. The episode feels like the writers completely forgot they were making the second to last episode of the entire show and just treated it like any random filler episode from the middle of a season. So now that you're all caught up, we can finally go back to Season 5, where things are unfortunately going to get really messy. So we're in the middle of the episode where everyone is supposed to be preparing for the final battle. And this is where things really start to fall apart. The whole episode has been moving at this painfully slow pace, and then suddenly we get to the scene where Will Byers comes out as gay to his friends and family. And look, before anyone gets upset, I need to be really clear, there is absolutely nothing wrong with Will being gay, or with the show including a coming out scene. Will's character has been hinted at being gay since literally the first season. Representation absolutely matters. And if this scene had been done well and placed at the right time, it genuinely could have been a really beautiful moment. But here's the massive problem. The scene happens right in the middle of what's supposed to be the most intense part of the entire season. Like, imagine if in the second to last episode of The Hunger Games, right before the final battle, they stopped everything so Katniss could have a long conversation about personal feelings. Or if in the last season of Supernatural, right before facing God, the show paused for 15 minutes for a relationship subplot. The timing just feels totally wrong because you're supposed to be focused on the end of the world, rather on personal drama that could have been addressed in earlier episodes when there was actually time for it. And because the scene feels so awkwardly placed and the dialogue feels kind of stiff, it doesn't land the way it should. Instead of feeling like a genuine character moment that's been building naturally, it feels feels like the writers suddenly remembered they wanted to include this and just shoved it into the script without thinking about pacing or story flow. The whole thing ends up feeling forced because of when and how it's happening. And that's when you realize this entire episode feels like checking boxes off a list. Include an emotional coming out scene check, reference the upside down check, have characters split up and reunite, show everyone being worried check, but none of it feels organic or like it's building toward anything meaningful. It's all just happening because the script says it should. That's it. The episode doesn't flow, build tension, and earn any of the emotional moments it's trying to create. But here's where things get really disturbing, and I mean disturbing in a way the show never intended. The Bridge currently has a rating of about 5.6 out of 10 on IMDb, which is absolutely insane for a show that usually gets ratings between 8 and 9. Even weaker episodes from earlier seasons still usually score at least a 7. But The Bridge is sitting at 5.6, and when you look at how people rated it, the numbers are completely extreme. Thousands of people gave it a 1 out of 10, thousands gave it a perfect 10, and barely anyone gave it anything in the middle. That's not normal. That's review bombing, where people intentionally tank or inflate a rating to make a point rather than judging quality fairly. And here's the really disturbing part. When you read the 1-star reviews, a huge chunk of them aren't about pacing or writing or plot. They're specifically angry about Will's coming out scene. You can read them yourself, review after review, ranting about woke agendas or forcing politics into entertainment or ruining the show with LGBTQ representation, which is honestly really sad and kind of scary because it shows how some people will completely reject anything that challenges their worldview even slightly, even in a show about fighting monsters from another dimension. But then on the opposite side, you've got people giving it perfect 10s specifically to counteract the review bombing, even if they didn't actually think the episode was that good. So now the episode's rating doesn't even reflect its actual quality anymore. It's just become this battleground for people arguing about representation, and all the actual legitimate problems, the terrible pacing, the boring plot, the lack of tension, all of that gets completely lost in the noise. The episode genuinely failed on its own merits. But nobody can even talk about that anymore because everything became about one controversial scene. And you know what the worst part is? This episode represents something we've all experienced when something we loved changed in a way we didn't like. That feeling of disappointment where something that brought you joy suddenly doesn't anymore. For a lot of us, Stranger Things has been our comfort show for years. We grew up with these characters, and when the show stumbled in the final season, it hurt because we made it personal by caring so much. So yeah, sorry, I warned you this would be kind of heavy. But hey, if you enjoyed this, like and subscribe for more videos breaking down why your favorite shows are secretly messed up. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.